Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pet gorilla, George. Well, here it is, ladies and gents, a movie that I've been waiting to break down for quite a bit of time. What is said to be one of the best comic book adaptations of all time. But first, a little bit of history. The year is 2005, and Batman Begins was a big hit at the box office. I mean, what did you expect, really? I mean, a movie that big at the time got a mediocre video game, and that's nothing to scoff at. Anyways, critics and audiences got a kick out of it, with this new Batman craze being kicked off so well, so that of course meant a sequel was in the works. Now, superhero sequels were more welcome and more received at the time, with the likes of X2 and Spider Man 2 being released in theaters and doing well at the box office, and making a ton of fans happy. So it was really no brainer to bring Batman back with a sequel. But this film would do something different. Just like the last film, it would be a more grounded film set in the version of Batman's world, but this time it would add a political and psychological element behind it. Discussing how corrupt officials can be and how the greatest of people can turn in an instant. Themes commonly seen in Batman stories like Year One and The Killing Joke. As a matter of fact, elements from both of those stories, as well as another fan favorite, The Long Halloween, were adapted into this film to make one of the most beloved and cherished films of all time. That's right, not just beloved comic book films, but films in general. And the box office numbers reflected that as well, with the $1 billion gross, making it one of the highest grossing movies of all time. But what are my thoughts? It's time to finally find out. Without restraint on spoilers, this is The Dark Knight. Order and chaos. Two things that don't blend together. And even Gotham City knew that. But as soon as Batman, still played by Christian Bale, turned up, the chaos died down and the order started to take over. With Jim Gordon, still played by Gary Oldman, working with the GCPD, and a new political party member, District Attorney Harvey Dent, played by Aaron Eckhart, arriving to try to make Gotham good again. There is one thing that breaks that equation. An arsonist who still believes in chaos. One who wants to break the moral code of both Batman and Harvey Dent. That, of course, is the Joker. Played by the late, great Heath Ledger. While Batman won't break because of his one rule, that won't stop the Joker from trying to spread as much chaos as possible, even going as far as killing several, in turning Harvey Dent into the psychopathic, unstable murderer, Two-Face. Now, I'm just violently paraphrasing because I'd essentially be retelling the entire movie to you. But honestly, you can tell why this movie is a prime example of filmmaking. Why it works as a standalone film, why it works as a sequel, why it works as a political thriller, and why it works as a comic book adaptation. It just works on a multitude of levels. But I can save the real breakdown of main messages to professionals. Because I'm just an amateur, but rest assured that I do study this movie on and off. But as great as the story is, what else makes this movie a prime example of a political thriller and comic book adaptation? Well, let's talk about it. Now, it is expected that a movie with this scale will have a massive lineup of characters. This is a pretty big cast, so I'm giving each character their own segment before talking about the effects, music, and action. But really, I need to talk about three characters: the Dark Knight himself, the Light Knights, and the Bringer of Chaos. Let's start off with Batman. Now, as I said in my review of Batman Begins, Christian Bale's version of Batman is one of the best adaptations of the character put to any media, and that is no different here. The journey that Bruce goes on in this film comes down to a fall from grace, whereas the first film involved the rise from the ashes of the death of his parents. His fall comes down to two important things in his life being taken from him. The first is Rachel, who was killed by the Joker in his plan of anarchy, and Harvey Dent, who was killed unexpectedly by the Joker's plan of chaos. But I'll get to the Joker's plan in a minute. The point is, both of these events break Batman down violently to the point where he is willing to give up his life of crime fighting and be hunted as a fugitive. It's very well done as the second chapter in his story, and this characterization reminds me how much I love this film and how well it handles his character. But of course, he isn't my favorite adaptation of Batman ever. Whatever the case is, he is a wonderful character in this film, and I can't thank Christian Bale enough for giving us a great performance. As far as Harvey Dent goes, we have one of the best versions of the character put to any adaptation here. He starts off as one of the only good people of Gotham, but forms a sort of rivalry with Bruce because he is marrying Rachel, Bruce's childhood friend and crush. The two have respect for one another, but Bruce is a little jealous. I mean, what do you expect from genius billionaire playboy philanthropist? When the Joker begins to kill everyone, he gives himself up and pretends he is Batman in exchange for the people of Gotham living. Unfortunately, Joker still got Dent and Rachel and placed them in separate warehouses. Harvey was rescued by Batman as the Joker had switched the locations of Harvey and Rachel to get to Batman. But at the cost of some of his face, Harvey's at his lowest point now and is pushed over the edge by the Joker, which leads to his full transformation and his eventual death. While again, not my favorite version of Two-Face's origin, nor the character, I do believe for certain that this is one of the best adaptations out of all of them. Aaron Eckhart is putting his all into this performance, and that is one of the best things I can say as well. But of course, what else do I expect from Christopher Nolan? Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time to talk about the Joker. The Joker in this film is easily one of the best comic book to live action movie adaptations of all time. That's nothing new to say. And it all comes down to Heath Ledger. Prior to this film, Ledger was mostly known for 10 Things I Hate About You, A Knight's Tale, and the critically acclaimed film Brokeback Mountain, which also starred Jake Gyllenhaal, who was a rumored Batman at one point. Whatever. When Ledger got this role, he worked hard to get into the role as he was a method actor. He was up late at night, he did his own makeup, and he even directed a scene of this film. Sadly, though, he was under a lot of stress and became addicted to drugs, and sadly passed away in January of 2008. This film was not only dedicated in his memory, and he even won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in 2009. Ledger did an incredible job as this character and is easily the definitive live-action version of the clown. As for his role in the film, it's simple but incredible. He's an anarchist who wants to spread chaos, only to showcase the world, and his way of doing that is with Batman. He tries to break Batman and his one rule, but Batman is better than that. He gains the upper hand physically and doesn't break his rule. And yet with a cost, Harvey was still broken, and all of this was down to the Joker. This is some of the smartest writing for any movie villain of all time, and 15 years later it still holds up. Heath Ledger's Joker will go down in history as one of movie's greatest villains of all time, and I can only thank really a few people for that, including Christopher Nolan, who helped bring this character to life again, but also Heath Ledger. Now, as far as the other characters go, they complement the story well. Jim Gordon, Lucius Fox, and Alfred are the characters to ground Batman. Allowing the Russian gangster helps showcase the bad side of Gotham. And Rachel, now played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, thought I'd point that out, is one of the last grounding things in Bruce's life. And when she died, he felt a lot more lost. So, yeah, the characters add a lot to this film. And it's incredible to see that a comic book film ends up becoming one of the finest political thrillers in the history of films. However, I'll get to my final verdict in a minute, because I have to talk about the effects and filmmaking techniques. The effects 15 years later still hold up. The tumbler effects, Batman gliding, Two-Face, and of course the whole truck chase scene. I bring up filmmaking techniques because of my favorite scene in the entire film, the interrogation scene. Oh my god, the camera work, which is very complex, the actual punches that Christian Bale delivered to Heath Ledger, the writing, I just love this scene. And I'll have a link to it in the description below. The music was done once again by Hans Zimmer, who did yet another incredible job, giving the right emotions needed, which is a praise I can offer many scores. And as for the action, the biggest praise I can give it is how much bigger it is in scale compared to Batman Begins, as well as being a lot better. The truck chase, the final battle with the sonar technology, the attack on LSI Holdings, and many other scenes are well done, and far better than any action scenes in Batman Begins. So yeah, easily one of the best comic book films of all time. It's baffling that a comic book film, of all things, becomes one of the finest political thrillers in the history of film, but it simply shows how talented these writers are and why Christopher Nolan was the right person to work on these films. And that reflects with my score. The Dark Knight gets a 10 out of 10. Damn, this one took a lot out of me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this film. And tune in next week when I take a look at the final film in the Nolan trilogy. With that said, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week.